What's the difference between forged and cast irons? And what is it about Japanese manufacturers specifically that makes them unique and much more expensive? Club fitter Chris Farley joins us here to tell us all about that. And we deep dive into some factory tours and we ask the question, did Tiger Woods actually play Miura irons at his peak? All that and more. Enjoy. I'll show you mine if you show me yours.
Okay. Let's do it.
This is me. This is a
Nice.
blade. Now, let's not go into the fact that I shouldn't be playing blades because I'm a 15, now 13 handicap. But this is a staff model, PP117, and I can't even find information about this online. Let's see what you're working with, Chris.
I play the Honma forged TW757X. Yeah, yours is a true blade. Mine's what I would call a cavity back blade. Just having a cavity just means, you have a little bit more forgiveness. You get the center of gravity a little bit lower, which gives it a little bit more launch and spin. So still blades, still forged, fantastic feel, which we're going to go into, but just a little bit more helpful than yours. Yours are punishing, Mark. I'm going to be honest.
God, I love them. But I can't hit a 3 or a 4 iron. And these are basically tour professional clubs. They have a very small margin for error. So as a 13 handicap, I not only have like a right and left miss, but now I have a lot more of a long and short miss because if I pure one, it goes. And if I don't, it don't.
Being a blade, you have to find the middle. The sweet spot is very small and there's no help at all. And it's that middle feeling, Mark, that we chase though, isn't it? It's that pure feeling, which we'll talk about.
So you came by your Honmas honestly. You became a fitting instructor and you had the keys to the candy store and you chose Honma. Tell us about that process.
Being a fitter, I had the run of the mill, but because I'd come off of a Mizuno forged iron, everything else just didn't feel as good. Every steel or carbon alloy, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, felt clicky and hard and loud, and the sound and the feel was off.
Yeah.
And so when I tried the Honmas, I was like, these feel even better. They're going to carry me to an even lower handicap, and they're going to give me a more consistent strike.
Before we do nuance, I kind of want to just sort of take a bigger step back and and kind of share something that I have found that I think is probably the best explanation of really what's the difference between forged and cast, basically.
Sure.
And then we're going to come back to your specific experience, like feeling these clubs and working through these clubs. So what I want to walk through is really probably the most amazing video that I found, kind of just on the very basics of this process. It's called The Art of Forging. This is the global director of R&D for Mizuno as of 13 years ago. He explains that really the biggest difference between the casting process and the forging process is that cast clubs are a liquid poured into a solid mold, right?
Yeah.
And that's how most mass manufacturers in the US and Europe are doing it. But in Japan, they are forging. Now, if you make golf clubs from the casting process, he says always there is some shrinkage, right?
There's also another term for cast as well. So cast is also called hot metal because they're pouring the hot metal. So cast, because it's a cast kind of outline, and also hot metal is the same as cast, really. Yeah.
Yeah. So when it changes that state from a liquid back to a solid, you get distortion. And then when it cools down, there are bubbles of air that are trapped in the product. So forging has no such things. So the structure is really tight, really consistent. And I think that's where you see this grain kind of in this detailed photo of the side angle of an iron.
Yeah.
Like this is what it will look like under a microscope, but you get fewer of those air bubbles in a forged iron. And this is, Luke Donald, he basically said, when he tries to test a golf club, obviously I'm looking at how a ball comes off the club face and how it actually feels through your hands. In Mizuno irons, there's no vibration throughout. So it feels like a sweet feeling. And that's what I heard over and over.
Yeah, but there's kind of the statement that follows Mizuno around is nothing feels like a Mizuno. As you just said, there's a good reason for that. And that's mostly the forging process.
Yeah. And this is the press. It's a single, machine, basically just a big hammer. You take hot rods of the steel, heated to X temperature, and they're in there. And there's a guy whose basically job is to strike this thing 3 times. So each time that they smash it, they're removing they're basically pressing it better and better each time. So you're getting a much tighter pack. There are no air bubbles, right? No flaws. And then you get this cookie cutter that eventually they cut out the head of the iron. They'll remove all the waste and they're left with the solid iron.
So the 241 is the modern day 2024-25 tour blade Mizuno iron, which is the equivalent to yours. It's a true blade, but it's tiny, it's thin. When they make it thinner, they get more deflection, more ball speed.
Yeah. The thinner the face, the more energy you can translate to the golf ball, the higher COR, actually coefficient of restitution, which is basically the springiness, like the energy you can transfer from one solid to the golf ball. Increased ball speed, the deeper center of gravity eases the launching of the ball. And so those are the qualities that I think you're getting from at least this specific forged iron process. Yeah. So I think that is a good foundation of forged versus cast.
And when you cure something that's forged, it feels better than a hot metal or a cast. So forging, any sort of brand forging will feel better on a pure hit. The Japanese just do it differently, and they use a softer carbon alloy. So they use, we'll maybe talk about it later. I think Mizuno use a 1025 chromology carbon alloy, and it just means it's a little bit softer, whereas Callaway might use a slightly harder carbon alloy. And there's pros and cons, there's trade-offs to each of those. A harder carbon alloy will wear longer. It won't knock up and have dent marks and scratch marks as much. But on the flip side, when you cure a softer carbon alloy, it feels like butter. And that's what
it
its
is a lot more expensive. And we'll get into that as well. Like these clubs, these from the Japanese manufacturers, especially Honma, they are known for being expensive, almost like luxury items, not just the design and sort of the rarity of how they manufacture these clubs, but just the quality of the steel that are going into these clubs.
Absolutely. And Honma, especially Honma, Mizuno and Strixon are more factory made, and they have a very, very large production line because they're the two biggest manufacturers of Japanese clubs. Honma, specifically, and maybe a few other Japanese irons like Miura, they're handmade. There's a master club builder who's been doing it for 30 years, and he is hand building and hand forging your irons to a precision that the other manufacturers can't match in a large scale factory. So there's obviously that adds to the price. Honma specifically, they add, when you start looking at their iron sets, they've got gold plated.
Oh God, they got platinum.
It goes up and up and up.
Yeah.
For me, the real price comes from the care taken into the craftsmanship and the care taken into the detail and building something with your hands and having a real human really, make sure it's right from start to finish process.
So then someone coming in off the street, what's the type of golfer that might eventually, we don't want to say that X golfer should have X clubs because it's a very personal choice and has a lot of factors to it, as you described. But what were those journeys like that ended up in kind of choosing not only a forged iron, but a forged iron from a specific Japanese manufacturer?
I mean, I don't want to specify and kind of label people too much, but the type of golfer that usually chooses a Japanese club is someone that really has a huge weighting system to feel. Feel is a massive part of Japanese irons. If someone's a real feel-based golfer and they like a soft feel, they don't like a clicky sound, because golfers, and even when I've gone to the Ping factory, I've gone to the TaylorMade factory, I've gone to the Titleist factory because of my job, a lot of them do say that there's a huge association with sound and feel. So if it sounds good, it feels good. But also with irons, it's a lot of it what goes through your hands in the grip. So a softer carbon alloy will just feel so buttery smooth versus a harder carbon alloy. But if you work off a feel and you like a soft feel and a soft sound, then that's generally people who do go to Mizuno and such other Japanese brands. Now, Japanese irons are not cheap. You're looking at Mizuno, a full set of, we talked about the Mizuno MP or Mizuno Pro 243s earlier. A full set of those is not cheap. You're looking at 1,400 pounds, 1,400, 1,500 pounds, which is a lot of money. So they are more expensive than other Western brands. Yes, they are more refined and they use a different carbon alloy and maybe a slightly different forging process. But also there's the shipping and That's why a lot of the Japanese brands and Asian brands just focus on Asia,
Yeah.
because they can keep the cost down because they don't have to ship and import so many. Whereas in the West, we can get TaylorMade and Callaway and Ping and all these other Western brands for a little bit cheaper because there's lower import and shipping fees, etc. But
So if you part of your early consultation is just knowing what the budget is for a set of irons or clubs, does that mean that for some people you're just sort of automatically, even if you get to the forged iron as a possibility, you may already rule out a number of the Japanese brands already?
absolutely,
Where do you actually tier these brands? Just
yeah.
generally how much they will cost, right? Not just Japanese brands, but like throw in those European and American manufacturers as well.
So you've got the Mizuno and well, Honma. Honma's way up there. Unfortunately, as I said, we've stopped fitting Honma because I don't think they could quite keep up with demand. But Mizuno are the most expensive irons in our bay. Titleist are probably the next most expensive. Let's say at 12 to £1,300 a set. But then I'd say you've got Ping and TaylorMade, about 1,100 to £1,200 a set. The Callaway, which are about the same. And then below that, you've got some very good quality irons, which are still very, very good in Cobra and Wilson. Wilson makes fantastic irons for the price. And then you've got some other brands, like here at American Golf, we can custom fit a full set of Ben Ross forged blades for £500.
Wow. I want to use this price discussion to segue into something that I think is really worth sharing. And that's, we're talking more specific about Honma. Honma clubs, there's a few great videos online that I've found about this. And there's kind of 4 key areas where they describe why Honma irons are so expensive. Number 1, they're forged, right? The process alone these are rarer clubs, but it's the Berez line they don't keep any stock, and every set is fully custom made and fully customizable. And it's at that part of the process where you get like the costs exploding, basically. It's the materials also, right? Unlike cheaper industrial steel that most golf club lines rely on, Honma goes the extra mile with special kinds of soft steel. But then they go the extra mile as well. They're putting in carbon fiber and gold and platinum. Like, these are not things that you necessarily need to get a good ball strike, but these are things that make these clubs extra rare. And one thing I didn't actually realize is how important shafts are to the Honma brand. Like, I think you in your fitting bays, you're mixing shafts and heads and grips, and you're basically making all these things. If you order Honma clubs from the manufacturer, they are making their own shafts, and they control every part of the manufacturing process. So from start to finish in-house, that adds a lot. You're not outsourcing shafts to a Chinese manufacturer or a cheaper manufacturer, even stateside. And that acceptable margin of deviance for everything, it's controlled so tightly that you're automatically just it's much more expensive. But this image here is just like some of the detailing that goes into these shafts. Like, these are pieces of art. They are. So you're no longer in just golf club space. You're now in art. Like in Japan, this is sort of broadly more for all the Japanese manufacturers. Like, the work of an artist or a specialized designer is highly revered, more in the Japanese culture than any other culture in the world. Like, to work on this Berez line, you have to be employed with Honma in Japan for 25 years to even touch this specific club. So that, that even adds to the allure, the price tag, like and that's how you wind up with the 5-star Berez. You're looking at €43,000 for a 5 through 11 iron and 2 wedges.
I mean, it's
Absolutely
excessive.
bananas.
It's excessive, but like you said, they're appealing to a higher market, and they're handmade, hand painted with rare minerals and precious materials. And someone's going to love that, and someone's going to pay that.
Yeah.
Not me.
Not me. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is why, rich douchebag is not an unfair criticism when you see people playing those clubs. I mean, they are going to be lighter and they are going to be softer. But if you're a 15 handicap, what does that matter? Right? Like, it doesn't, like, you should be playing clubs from Costco. Get the Kirkland signature irons, and you probably aren't going to shave that many strokes. You're not going to add that many strokes overall.
You should be going for a fitting is what Go for a fitting.
You're right.
Your nearest fitting, your local fitting.
What else do you want to touch on when it comes to whether it's forging or Japanese clubs specifically, or anything that we kind of glossed over before that you really want to hammer down?
One of the biggest statements that I could probably say is that in general, forged clubs do feel better. whether it's any brand. I know we've focused a lot on the Japanese market, and we're talking about Japanese clubs, and specifically Honma, but any forged club will feel better. So, but I think it's worth trying, because you might fall in love with that feeling of a forged iron. And it's those sorts of feelings as golfers that we fucking love. That's why we fucking love golf.
So let's talk about the masters of forged irons, which is, of course, Miura.
Yes.
And this is a really awesome video that we found from Miura Golf. Adam Scott visits the Miura Factory on YouTube. First of all, we start with this beautiful setting. Like it's mosaics of golden and green fields in rural Japan, and it's tiny factory on a river. Yeah. And it's still run by Miura-san and his two sons. And Miura-san, he's over 80 years old. And I just love the aesthetic of this. Like, seen videos of, go to the Titleist factory, you go to the Ping TaylorMade factory. Like, they look nothing like this. This is just a going back in time, basically. There is one more thing on Miura that I do want to go into that kind of just sort of follows on through the factory tours. There's a guy named Eric Anders Lang. And when he was doing Adventures in Golf on the Scratch TV channel, he went to the Miura Factory and he did an awesome tour of Japan. And this was the nugget that I really wanted to talk about. So Miura manufactured a limited set of irons for Titleist to commemorate Tiger Woods' 97 Masters victory. The question is, did they actually manufacture the irons that Tiger Woods actually used? This is the rumor, that Miura are actually the ones who made Tiger Woods' irons when he was first coming out and throughout his peak years, but that they just had the Titleist brand on them. And he asked Miura-san this question directly. And his answer was, well, that's not something that we discuss often. What Tiger Woods has, we deliver some different types of golf clubs to Titleist in Japan. What we create, we receive orders from Titleist Japan, but we don't know where those clubs are going from there.
So I've heard this
all you get. That's all you get from Miura-san.
I believe that when Tiger was at his best and his prime playing Titleist blades, I believe they were Miura clubs. Yes. I do believe they.
He asked one of his other sons. He says, I have heard that rumor too. And then
yes.
And then the other one says, the other son, well, if he did, that would make me very happy. Chris, these are non-denial denials.
Yes, they are. I agree.
They're doing a very good job of it. It's practice, it's polished, but it doesn't do anything to
they're very respectful to Titleist. They're very respectful to Titleist, and they don't want to ruin their relationship with Titleist, obviously.
And they probably have it contractually that they could never admit this anyway. Chris, where can the people find you, and what's coming up next for you?
So you can still find me on Instagram at _Charlie_Farley_. What's coming up next for me? Just more golf, man. Just love it. Summer's approaching.
Summer's coming.
There's the sun's on my face.
Thanks for watching the FLG Golf Podcast. Subscribe to come on this journey with us. If you want to watch another full episode, click here. If you want to watch a playlist of our best of each full episode, click here.